Welcome. Today we want to talk about a really common process, and that's being asked within a job interview to do a project, to do
Yes.
some work for them.
Yes. And, this is a great way to showcase
Yeah.
your skills, your
Yeah.
talent, what you can bring to the team. But it's also a place where some people that we have worked
Mhm.
with have fallen into a trap of doing work for free.
Right.
Right. So,
Mhm.
right.
It happens a lot more also with women than with men.
Yes.
Because women aren't as likely to challenge something like this. So most of the time, completing some type of real world work assignment within the context of an interview makes a lot of sense.
Right. You want that.
And from the employer perspective, it's very common if you're in a client facing role.
Right.
In sales, you'll almost always be asked to do something like this. If you're in a strategy role, if you're doing investment strategy, if you're doing marketing strategy, that would make sense. If you're entering into a highly technical role, specifically coding or application development, you can expect to have a live time proctored kind of work assignment. You're writing code right in front of them. They need to know that you actually can do what you say you can do. Now, for those technical assignments, we're not going to really talk about those today because those are pretty black and white. You'd be doing the assignment, you'd be given the problem to solve, and someone is watching you solve it to make sure that you're solving it yourself. But just one little caveat that comes from experience. Yeah. I had a private client once years ago that made it all the way through like 8 rounds of interviews. And the final interview, he was a data scientist, was taking this set of data and doing some coding for it. And the proctor was providing the prompts. Do this, do that. It was a 3-hour assignment, and he didn't understand her. She had heavily accented English, and he was so polite that he asked her a couple of times to repeat it, and then he didn't understand it. He was too embarrassed.
Yes,
So he
I remember this story.
Yeah, so he just did it, and he didn't understand the instructions, and he didn't get the job. So if you are doing one of these proctored tech assignments and you don't understand the directions, either
Ask
because
for clarification.
Yes, in this case, I told him to ask her to write the instructions out in the chat because he was having a hard time hearing.
Perfect.
So not a really common thing, but very common that you might not understand the instructions.
Absolutely.
So important for that. But anyway, for non-technical roles, we've got a few ground rules that we've put together to help you kind of navigate this territory.
So first and foremost, you have to understand the assignment. You do not want to be making up in your mind what you think this is or leave to interpretation. Your own interpretation. You really want to understand the assignment. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
So it's important to just clarify whatever details they provide. But unlike what you might do if you were in the role, don't dig too deep. If they're giving you high level, I just went through this with my sister, very high level software sales exec, and she's like, they gave me so little to work with. I said, because they're not really looking for you to write the plan for this client. They just want to see how you think. So don't dig deeper. You don't make more work for yourself. If they give you some high level details, make sure you understand what they are and work with those. If they're only giving you that kind of general scenario, that's all they're looking for.
Right. So number 2 is to keep it high level. So that was the advice you were giving to your sister, just sort of getting inside the mind of who's asking the question.
Right. So I said to her, you can talk kind of conditionally, like, well, in this case, she was doing a sales presentation. So she would be in character, start the presentation. And then as an aside, she'd say, well, at this point, I would have already had I would already met with their whole tax team. I would understand what their biggest challenges are. I would have met with our tech team to understand which products would work best. So in this scenario, I'm going to be pitching this product.
Right.
Okay. So keeping it high level enough so that they can see how you solve the problem, kind of what your thought process is, but you're leaving them wanting more. Now, if this is a strategy role, this has happened with some of our students, if it's a strategy role, it's even more important to not go into the details, but you could say something like, for the purposes of this general assignment, I'm just focusing on a general plan of action. However, I've thought this through in more detail. And if and when I'm brought into the role, I'd be really excited to share kind of that fully fleshed out plan with you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction to make, and knowing that it's okay to say something like that in an interview, because I do think that oftentimes when you get into the interview, you feel like you have to give them everything.
Right.
And you have to remember that you are extremely valuable.
Right.
And everything that you are bringing to the table, it is good to leave them wanting more. And also doing something like that really shows a sense of confidence.
I agree. Yep.
It makes them think, gosh, you know what? This person really does have more to offer, but also is confident in their delivery. So I think that's an important distinction to make. And just even sometimes having the little script of how to say it in the interview is really important.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is to focus on the presentation.
Because that's what,
you don't want this to be mumbo jumbo.
No. So you think about when you're hiring anyone, you want to work with someone who's organized, who's clear. And in this case, they are asking you to make a presentation to make sure it looks good. I just went through this with my godson, actually, like a month ago. He's just out of college. He's going into finance and he's going to an analyst role. And he was all worked up on like how detailed to go. I said, no, do 3 slides, make them look good. Show them that you understand the tool. So make one a scattergram, make one a bar graph. Show them as an analyst, they need to know that you can take data and analyze it and present it to them so it's easily understood. So just show them that. In a sales presentation, make it look good. As even a strategy presentation. So focus on that. And by keeping it organized and visually appealing, you'll engage with your audience better and then show them how professional you are.
Well, and it also helps you in those moments where you might get nervous during this interview process and, your mind can go blank. Well, you just have that little something that's going to remind you, oh, here's the direction that I'm going in, or get you back on track if you've gotten off track. Because sometimes you'll get questions during this and that can throw you off a bit. All right. And then the last one, and always, we are big proponents of closing, the close. So you want to close.
I mean, obviously, if it's a sales job, that would be part of your whole spiel. But even if it's not, closing for something, closing for feedback at the end of it, like you just said, are there any questions? Kind of role playing it out. And then always at the end saying, I'd love to get your feedback on how my presentation today, what your thoughts are, what you're thinking the next steps might be. And this could be interpreted both as you as the candidate asking that, or you as the pretend employee asking that. Either way, it plays out really well.
Yeah. I think it's really important to note a few things about what can play out in these scenarios. So preparing work in an interview, how long should that, what should they be asking of you? Should you be spending 10 hours on this to prep for this? Or is this
should be a couple of hours max. Okay. I mean, you're not being paid for this. And if you are spending if it takes 10 or 20 hours to do the assignment, then that's work that you should be paid for. So the work assigned, here's some general things to consider. If you're being assigned work, it should be representative work or conceptual, theoretical work, not, hey, we have this client and we can't figure out how to make this product work for them. Show us how. Right. That is not representative work for an interview.
Well, could the employer take this and run with it?
Absolutely.
If the answer to that is yes, then that's a whole different matter, right?
Yeah. So they come to you and they say, Kelley, we're looking at opening up the Latin American market for our product. And let's say you're Latin American, you speak Spanish, maybe you come from Latin America, and they want you to put a plan together. And they're asking you for strategy, tactics, assets. That is not representative work.
No.
And you're going to politely kind of decline that. So you're going to say something like, I'd be happy to put a plan like that together. In fact, Kelley, this is exactly the kind of work I love to do best. And since it requires a fair amount of work, and since my final product would be something that you could run with, whether or not I'm hired, I'd expect to be paid at my hourly rate, which is X. Right. And you say it with a smile, and then it does.
And with confidence.
Yes. And it does a couple of things. First of all, it's setting a boundary. I do not give my work away for free. And sometimes rarely, but there are, employers out there that are looking for free work, and that we're not doing that. But most of the time, it'll give the employer either a moment to recognize, you're right, this is a little bit too much to ask of someone who's just interviewing. It also gives an opportunity, if they really want the work done, to pay you as a contractor to do it.
Yep.
And overall, if it's done right, if you're able to meet that, usually they're not going to pay you, and usually they're not going to expect you to do that full plan. So once you kind of reach that sweet spot, you're given this opportunity to show, okay, this is how Kelley Biskupiak approaches a problem. Right. This is how she thinks. This is how she organizes her thoughts. This is how she might look working on our team. There's a lot that they can glean even from a fake assignment.
That's what you're showcasing.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly. And I also think that you are also managing that internal pleaser.
Yeah.
In these scenarios where you might want to really please this team. You don't want to ruffle feathers. You don't want to say something. And so having this in your mind and knowing that you do have permission to set boundaries in an interview is a big deal for you internally to say, it's okay. I don't have to overplease everybody, make you love me so much that you can't say no to me, because sometimes you might be showcasing something else and they're, right out of the gate of, this is somebody we could really, take advantage of. And you don't want to do that either.
And I think the closing thought here is that when you are asked to do some type of representative work within the confines of an interview, it's a really good sign. Because as a hiring manager or an employer, I don't want to waste my time watching, Joe Blow, who I'm not even interested in, doing a 1 hour presentation. I don't have that kind of time. So this is an opportunity. And with the guidelines that we presented today, it's a great way for you to make the most of that opportunity.
Yes. So there you have it. The way to set yourself up for success when you are asked to do project work on an interview. Yeah. If you like what you heard today, you can like and subscribe. And you can also visit us to learn all about our content, our courses, and what we have available to you at www.preparetolaunchu.com. Thanks.